Hey guys, so today's lesson we're going to be looking at different forms of persuasive writing. Of course, the ones that we're going to be looking at, it's not the only forms of persuasive writing out there, but these are the ones we're going to be focusing on. There's certainly forms of persuasive writing that I'm sure you guys come across even just in your day-to-day life. So it's really good to be aware of how persuasive writing can sort of come about and how people like to communicate their ideas. So persuasive writing does not just come in the form of opinion articles for newspapers. In our last unit, Unit 1, we were looking predominantly at newspaper opinion articles. But this time around, we are going to be looking at different forms of persuasive texts. So people attempt to persuade in other forms of writing, such as letters, blogs, social media posts, commentary online, and letters to the editor. We're going to have a look at a few of these different forms today. It can be very difficult to categorize key characteristics of each form, but there are some defining features that we can identify. So what I'm going to give you now is a bit of an overview of the types of writing that you might find in these forms, but of course it's not they're not exclusive. It's kind of general because of course people present persuasive writing in different ways, but it's good to keep these things in mind. So I'll start with letters first of all. So letters are often formal. They rely more on fact and reason and expert opinion than emotion and passion to make an argument. Letters are sometimes presented to parliamentary figures questioning their legislation. So letters can come from different sectors of the community to raise concerns, identify issues, and offer solutions. Oftentimes, letters might be penned or written by multiple people in the same field. Potentially a group of doctors who come together who want to question or raise concerns about legislation. There's an example that I'm going to show you today from a business owner, the CEO of Jim's Group. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Jim's Mowing and the franchises involved in the Jim's Group business, but he wrote a letter to the Premier expressing his concern about the stage 4 restrictions and how they would impact his business. So he would be considered, I guess, an expert opinion on the business impact, or so the impact on businesses that the stage 4 restrictions would have. So he presents his opinion in a manner that is factual, that is informed, because he is someone that is involved in that particular issue in quite a personal way. So let's have a think about blog posts or social media posts. So the structure of blog posts and social media posts are defined by the person who writes them. Arguments are presented in either a reasonable tone or an emotional tone, depending on the poster, the person that is making the post. So you can't say that definitely all social media posts are emotional or evoke emotion. Some don't. Some do rely on facts and statistics to present their point of view. But it depends on the poster. It depends on what they're saying. Social media posts provide a voice for the general public. They enable people with or without expert opinion to contribute to a debate. So oftentimes, a lot of different people on social media will contribute to a debate, even if they are not someone who you would say has an expert opinion on that particular area. So it is an option. So the social media platforms are an opportunity for people to share their point of view, whether or not they have facts behind them. It's just sharing their point of view. In keeping with the platform, social media posts are often accompanied by visual images, particularly on Instagram and Facebook. So as you guys well know, social media platforms are very visual. It's based a lot on what you see. So oftentimes when someone posts something, they post a message, it'll be accompanied by a visual image. Now let's have a think about online comments. These are quite directly related to social media posts because online comments come up as a response to content online. So usually on social media, but also on newspaper websites or blogs that allow commentary. Comments are often emotional. They can be lacking in reasoning, and dare I say that they are often attacking the opposing point of view. So comments are when you get people who really do give emotional arguments. Now, of course, that's a generalization. Sometimes people do post online comments that are very reasoned, very articulate, expressed with an expert opinion. But because comments often come from the general public, I'm not talking about influencers, I'm not talking about people with a big following on social media, I'm just talking about your average everyday Joe that gets on social media in the morning, checks, sees a post, and wants to comment on it. The popularity of online comments is indicated by the amount of likes that the comment gets. So it's a good indication of whether or not people are responding well to a comment by looking at the reactions that people have given. And finally, letters to the editor. So letters to the editor are brief letters, usually quite short, written by newspaper readers who respond to stories that are published by a newspaper or magazine. Now, these letters are written by ordinary, everyday people, not necessarily edited before publication. Some are reasoned, some are emotional, but if they are included in the newspaper, we can assume that an editor has gone through and chosen them and approved them to be included. So we know that they're going to make sense, as opposed to what you might see in some online commentary. Online comments don't always make sense, but letters to the editor have gone through a process of approval and they've been published in a newspaper or online, so we can assume that they will make sense. Letters to the editor are often published alongside other letters that address the same topic or the same written article from the newspaper. Sometimes they're on the same side and sometimes not. So usually letters to the editor will be together, so there'll be a couple presented together, and they may present opposing points of view. Now I'm going to show you guys some examples of these forms of persuasive writing that I've just gone through. And these are the examples that you will actually be analysing. So you've got a task ahead of you today. You just need to choose one of the options. You don't need to do all three. However, if you are feeling like you'd like to be challenged, or if you'd like the experience of analysing different forms of persuasive writing, please feel free to do all three of them. Now, I'm not going to show you the letter one just because it's a little bit longer, but the task number one on Schoology is to analyse a letter, the one that I was speaking about before, Jim's group. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. But I'm going to start off with this social media post. So on Monday this week, Dan Andrews, Premier of Victoria, I hope you all know that, posted on social media a reiteration of the importance of the stay-at-home restrictions that are currently in place in Victoria. He presented a graph and statistics in order to support his points. So you can see this is the post that Dan Andrews made on Monday. I'll get you guys to pause and have a read through that if you like, but I do have that included on the Schoology page as well. So you can see the social media post. Dan is presented, he's a public figure, he's a parliamentary figure. He's not presenting an emotional argument, he's presenting a lot of facts to back up and justify his decisions. And he's also included a graph for people to see as well. Like I said, social media is often a visual platform. You will often find visual images included alongside persuasive text. So this is the social media post that I'll be asking you guys to analyse in your Schoology task today, if that's the one that you choose. Next up, online comments. Now, in response to Dan Andrews' social media post, here are some of the comments that he received. You can see these vary in their articulation and also in their reasoning. So we have one in the middle there, where the guy, Jesse McClellan, he hasn't really presented an argument, has he? And yet he has 208 likes, loves, and laughs, which is really interesting. So people are responding well to that, even though it really doesn't present any kind of argument, does it? But he is clearly sending a message. He's saying, I don't believe you. I'm not listening to you, essentially. Doesn't really give any supporting arguments, so it's a pretty weak comment to say. There's not a lot of people that would say I stand by Jesse, but he has presented his point of view and he's well within his rights on the platform that he's chosen, online comments. I think this one's really interesting. Phil King, he says, I think it would be smart to lock us down until every known virus is eliminated. Now, do you think that he's being serious there or do you think he's being sarcastic? I would err on the side of sarcasm with that one. And that is one of the comments that's included in the task that I'd like you to do on Schoology if you choose to look at online comments. So pause the video, have a little look, read through these comments and see how people express themselves online. You can see that the commentary is very different. It depends on the person, it depends on the topic, but oftentimes it's very emotional and it's presenting, people don't often present facts and statistics in their online commentary. It's usually just, what is your opinion? Put it out there. And lastly, we have our letter to the editor. Now, this particular letter to the editor very obviously is in response to an article that was written in The Age on the 5th of September. I'm not sure exactly what it was called. It was written by someone called, or it was included information from someone called Stephen Duckett, who's a Grattan Institute health policy expert. And this person is clearly stating that they disagree with what Stephen Duckett had to say. So even though we haven't read the article that the letter writer is responding to, we can still identify the letter writer's point of view by reading this letter to the editor. However, our analysis would be better if we knew what the original article had said. So you can only work with what you've got. If I've only given you the letter to the editor to analyze, then I expect you to do what you can with this letter. But if you did have access to that original article, your analysis would probably be quite a bit deeper. Something to keep in mind when you are analysing persuasive texts. Now, I just want to make a point about persuasive techniques because this is something I found came up quite often in our area of study in Unit 1. I just want to make it really clear, persuasive techniques don't change. So persuasive techniques are used in all different forms of persuasive writing. Your knowledge of persuasive techniques will allow you to identify them and identify the impact they are intended to have on the reader. So something I found in our last SAC in Unit 1, Area of Study 2.1, where you were analysing persuasive text, I found a lot of students would identify the persuasive technique, but they would not explain why that persuasive technique was used, and they would not quote the persuasive technique. So they'd tell me a technique was being used, but they would not show me that they knew where it was. They would not prove that that persuasive technique was present, and they would not explain the intended impact on the reader. So I've given you an example of how that might look. Now remember, yesterday we were looking at an article by Andrew Bolt that was titled "Why US Race Riots Are Rife with Hypocrisy." So we're going to consider this title because there's a really obvious persuasive technique being used in this title. Now in the red box, I've named that particular persuasive technique. The persuasive technique used in this title is alliteration. Okay, so he's used race riots are rife. That R sound is being utilized throughout the title, okay? I've then quoted it in the yellow box. So I've gone a step further. I've included 2 of the 3 things I need to when identifying persuasive techniques. I've named and I've quoted. The persuasive technique used in this title is alliteration, comma, quote, race riots are rife. Done, okay? And the final step where you include all 3 steps in identifying a persuasive technique is to explain the impact of the technique. So the green box is what I want you to be saying. I do not want you to stop at the red box or the yellow box. So in full, if you were identifying a persuasive technique, it might sound something like this. The persuasive technique used in this title is alliteration, comma, quote, race riots are rife. Alliteration is often used to emphasize a phrase and create a fluid sentence which sticks in the reader's mind. Okay? So it doesn't have to be a huge deal, but you need to make sure that you include the important elements of identification. You can't just rely on saying this persuasive text includes alliteration, because that doesn't tell me that you, first of all, know what alliteration is, or you can identify the alliteration in the article, or you know what alliteration does, or you know why writers use alliteration. So that was just something to remind you guys of as you go off and analyze different forms of writing. Like I said, choose one of the tasks on the Schoology page. You don't have to do all of them, but if you would like to, the option is there. Good luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing your responses.